I want to tell you everything that's changed since my 20s. Well, the most important parts. There are no promises here, no glow up, no clean before and after. There was a lot more of starting over, getting it wrong, and circling back. But one thing stayed true, the thread underneath the stories. I'm no longer chasing a better or best version of myself. At 35, everything I'm building is a home for my favorite version of me. A big part of my journey from my 20s to my 30s is space. Creating more space and spaciousness between a reaction, between jumping to conclusions, between wanting to force a solution that was not yet ready to present itself. I'm still learning this to a degree, but essentially it's a big lesson in learning to leave things be instead of picking at it like a scab that won't fully heal. In my 20s, I chased aha moments. You know, when you have a light bulb moment and you feel like this is the missing piece of information that I've needed in order to heal myself or to finally stop repeating that annoying pattern that I always tend to repeat. So perpetually, I felt like I was in this waiting hall, seeing the next door that I wanted to walk through, but feeling like I just wasn't quite there yet. It's like having knowledge of something, but not being able to embody it. And at some point, through all the learning and practicing, I realized that what I really needed to do was actually to listen and love those parts of myself that I've been trying to outgrow or leave behind. And that the louder they got and the more patient and compassionate I was towards those parts and gave them what they always sought out externally, whether it's validation, unconditional love, presence, attentiveness, whatever it was, if I could genuinely give those parts of myself all of that, then actually they got quieter and I was able to slowly, not overnight, not through a magic door, but slowly integrate them into this current version of myself. But it really did take time. And I had to spend the time and the experiences to finally arrive here. In my 20s, I was so proud of my ability to be productive. I was what you would call an anti-procrastinator. I just couldn't relax unless the things I needed to do were done. In fact, it would be even better if I got ahead and did things that I wasn't even supposed to do yet. At 35, I'm still not that good at just being chill. I think I've had to be really responsible since I was a kid, and it's somewhat ingrained in my DNA. So a big journey throughout my 20s into my 30s was learning how to just let myself relax and rest. But it was incredibly difficult. Throughout the last decade, I've had enough experiences where I tried really hard to allow myself to just rest. For example, do things that I consider lazy, like binge watching a really good TV show for 8 hours straight. And that's all I do. I don't do it often, but I do because I've noticed and realized that the more I allow myself to fully let go and rest and do things that are unproductive, it actually creates this spaciousness for more energy to be refueled, for me to actually feel excited about tackling my to-do list versus dreading the same to-do list. There's also more space between myself and my inner critic. She still exists, she's still in there, but now I can kind of take more of a witness stand and hear what the critiques are without letting it inform my opinion of myself. I still have insecurities. For example, my hair is thinning as I get older, and there's lines on my face that I've never noticed before. I think sometimes I overshare and talk too much, and there's other times I'm way too quiet and in my own head. But none of those things, none of those insecurities that I have stops me from being who I am. In my 20s, I looked for home in all the wrong places. I looked for a home in other people, relationships, in places. I left and ran as far as I could all over the world. And the further I ran, the path actually ended up directing me back to myself. And this line stood out to me for probably nearly a decade, which was home is right here. And I didn't know what that meant because the discomfort of being in my own skin, so to speak, not vanity-wise, not physically, but just being here, I was so uncomfortable. I didn't want to deal with all the big feelings I had, all the spiraling thoughts and all the concerns and fears and doubts about the future. All I wanted to do was find home elsewhere and find a sense of safety and security there, or belonging. And that's what changed in the last decade. I still, as a human being, enjoy validation and reassurances from other people, but the home that I've spent the time and effort building here feels like a sanctuary. Sometimes there's still storms that happen, but now I feel like it can withstand anything. Doesn't mean it doesn't get scary, but when you really, really are going through a crunchy moment and sometimes you forget, I have reminders there of moments that this home went through hurricanes and storms and floods and how it withstood. Your home knows when you like to wake up and go to bed. Your home knows how you like to take your tea and coffee. Your home knows you well and all of your preferences. And I think now in my 30s, I am getting so much better at honoring all of those things. And I don't think that's something that I did really well in my 20s. Not only was I not honoring what I needed, I don't know if I wanted to listen either. For example, personally, in my 20s and early 30s, I was very much consumed and overwhelmed by my mental and emotional well-being, and I hardly put any effort into my physical well-being. Instead of random workouts, I stick to a simple plan for myself that's tailored towards my fitness goals, and I'm no longer chasing for vanity metrics, but I do welcome them more like a cherry on top. Something else that popped up for me was when I crossed over from 33 to 34. I was always proud of the fact that I told myself I would age gracefully. I saw how hard people around me try to cling on to this idea of youth. But it did happen when I crossed over to 34. I started thinking about how much time did I have left? How much time did I have left to have kids? Did I want kids? When would I be ready to have kids? And I think maybe a lot of us are in that same boat, where around this age, we're not necessarily trying to have kids right now, but we want to know what's going on in our bodies. I tried to research some private facilities to do hormone testing, but the reviews kind of put me off, so then I just kept putting it off. So I used Mira's at-home hormone monitor. And essentially it measures 4 key fertility hormones. I love that it showed me exactly when I ovulated and whether my hormones were fluctuating as expected across a full cycle. Now that I have seen my data in real time, I have one less thing to worry about. And when I'm ready to have that conversation, I can take the data that I do have and bring it to my healthcare provider. Mira can also be helpful if you are someone who is trying to actively conceive, or if you are heading toward perimenopause, or if you just have irregular periods and you want to know what's going on. Feel free to use my code DIA for 25% off the Mira kit, or you can just use the link down below. The people that we surround ourselves with can either bring out parts of us or dim parts of us. I had social anxieties for most of my 20s and a little bit into my early 30s. For an entire decade, I had one closest friend, and I'd known her since I was right as I was entering my early 20s. And I just hadn't realized how much, in a way, that friendship held me back. There's no blame here at all, but you are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I always felt proud that I had my ride or die, even if it was just one person, and didn't realize how much it stopped me from exiting this comfort, the safety bubble. The said friend had a lot of social anxieties herself, and she wasn't comfortable doing new things outside of her comfort zone. And I just became okay with that because I had someone. It was enough. What I didn't realize was that when that friendship ended, without going into the tea of what happened, it actually opened up this whole new world. I know it sounds really dramatic, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is I'm all for loyalty. But are there perhaps some instances where certain circles of friends, groups of friends, or one individual might be holding us back, might be keeping us comfortable in our own little safety bubble? And how much Might you be missing out by not going out to have new experiences or being courageous enough to put yourself in a room full of people you don't know just to be delightfully surprised? And truly, socializing is a muscle. And I can say this from someone that used to dread if I was invited to a thing where I didn't know most of the people, or it wasn't like a very small, intimate group where everybody knew everybody, I would either say no or I would just have terrible anxieties right before I got there. But every time I actually showed up, it was always a lot more fun than I expected to be. And it was never as scary. And the more I put myself in those situations, the more comfortable and confident I got. I know it's really annoying. It's one of those exposure therapy things, but it's truly what works. You start to get those experiences to recognize that, oh, I actually love talking to people, or I have a lot of interesting things to say, or even if I'm uncomfortable, that's okay. I don't have to be a social butterfly. And that's something else that makes a huge difference. Our internal perception really informs our external experience, and it's kind of like a feedback, feed-forward loop. When I walk into a room and I immediately tell myself that this is the wrong room for me without actually engaging or finding out, then everything that the energy I'm giving, the things that I'll say, the ways that I'll speak, my lack of confidence or lack of feeling like I belong will be palpable for the room. And therefore, I believed this is the wrong room for me, and it became the wrong room. Now, at this point in my life, because I know myself intimately well, I can pretty quickly tell when I walk into a room, let's say with people I don't know, if it is in fact a room that I could belong in or not. And if it's a room that isn't for me, I can still find bits and pieces of it that's valuable or entertaining. Even in those instances, I still feel very comfortable and confident being myself. I ask questions when I genuinely am curious about something. I stay quiet if I have nothing to contribute to the conversation. And I leave people's opinions about me to them because it's not my responsibility and there's nothing I can do to change someone's mind. And the more you try, the more desperate it comes off. There is something that's quite empowering and peaceful when you can just sort of anchor down in where you are and stay true to yourself and essentially give other people a chance to not like you. Because at the end of the day, if you are in fact in the wrong room with the wrong people, their opinion of you might not matter as much as we think they do. Something else that's quite funny is that in my 20s, I really didn't like people with a sunny disposition, like the bubbly social butterfly personality. I always thought they were really fake and annoying. But as I've journeyed through this last decade, I've come to truly appreciate the fact that every person we come across is a mirror. And when we have a reaction towards someone, it's either that they show us a part of ourselves that we reject, or there's something about them that we actually really want to embody more of, but maybe haven't felt safe enough to do. Once I started realizing that, I could meet people from all walks of life, all types of different personality, and find things that I could appreciate about them, or find things that maybe shows me something about myself. Instead of being a hater and thinking like, oh, this person is so annoying and fake, they're just talking to everybody. Now it feels more like I love the fact that they can kind of move through the room and make conversations with everyone. Am I that person? No. Would I someday become that person? Perhaps. But I appreciate that the effortless way someone can do that is something that I also have within myself, if I choose to cultivate that part of myself. If it feels right to wear that as a layer of my identity. So not only am I able to appreciate every mirror that I encounter, there's also a choice. Is this something that I would like to embody more of? Is this something that I want to spend time and effort in walking towards? Or you can say, I know who I am. I love and appreciate this certain quality about somebody, but it's not important for me to embody. It's not who I want to be. And so our identity becomes a lot more fluid and malleable, just like how we go through different seasons in our lives. In my 20s, I still carried a lot of resentment towards my past. I held a lot of resentment for the things that did happen that were outside of my control, and for the things that didn't happen and I wish that it had. And I know some people don't like hearing this, but it's simply a personal choice I made at some point. And it wasn't that I decided and things changed overnight. It was a slow progression. Like most of the things I've learned, it takes time and practice and repetition. But at some point, I just realized that the only empowering way I could move forward and make choices that were within what I decided was to stop giving power away to how the past had affected me and made me the way that I am. In the past, when I was younger, I would go through troublesome periods of time and feel this internal conflict arise. And I would say, I blame this on XYZ. That happened, and now I am the way that I am. And not in a positive way, obviously. It's disempowering because it feels final. It feels like because I didn't get the attentiveness or unconditional love or the whatever it is that we missed out on or that was terrible, because that happened, now this is the way it is. And this shall always be the way it is, dictating everything I do, dictating all my relationships, my career choices, my paths, my outlook on life. And it was incredibly disempowering, but I couldn't let it go. It really took time. It was like peeling back an onion through layers and layers over time. Don't get me wrong. My past still affects me today. And instead of feeling like a victim about what happened or didn't happen, I can say I'm feeling this way right now and I'm reacting this way because of this thing in the past. It created a wound in me. I'm still having an automatic reaction and I'm being triggered, if you will, by this. And I'm also working towards evolving past it and showing it that I've got them now. I've got her, this younger part of me. And that no matter what happens outside, storms, floods, this home will always be here. At 35, I live more in the middle of everything. I am definitely someone that is prone to the outer edges, so to speak. A very all or nothing sort of approach. But this kind of thinking and feeling leads to a lot of things that aren't factually true, but become the stories that we tell ourselves. Now there's just a lot more room to hold multiple truths, even if there are two truths that contradict or compete with each other. I can hold them because there is more of this spaciousness in this house. All or nothing might sound like fire and passion and loyalty and conviction, but it just doesn't leave a lot of room for breath. It doesn't leave a lot of room for other people to share or show you something that maybe you never thought of, or something that would drastically affect you or change you for the better. Remaining open and porous while having your core anchored and defined, and learning how to move more and more towards the center of everything, I think has been a big signature of my journey from my 20s into my 30s. I think the last thing here I want to talk about is that not knowing what the future held, having to stand in uncertainty was simply unbearable. It was a thing that haunted me. And my life had a lot of changes, big changes, but I was always dreading uncertainty. And my actions were a lot of times dictated by my desire to have certainty, whether it was good for me or not. But now I still fear uncertainty, but I'm also excited by it. And that's something that's new. I think part of that is because I've seen now through a decade or so, and of all the experiences, that uncertainty, though it may be scary when you're standing in front of it, oftentimes lead to something more expansive or lead to a direction that is more aligned, if I can say. That once you arrive, it feels like you were always meant to go this way, even if you went that way initially kicking and screaming. And I think part of that is on owning authorship. How do you interpret what has happened? Was it a lesson or was it a failure? Was it something that made you more of who you are today, or is it something that damaged you permanently? But I think being in my 30s, it does feel a lot more like I become the writer, because I want to claim that responsibility. I want to feel that even though there are going to be so many things that are going to be out of my control that will happen between now and the end, how will I write them? What kind of stories? What's the tone? What's the perspective? And that internal relationship, that home that we get to continue to build and cultivate, is something I'm incredibly excited about as I move into my late 30s and 40s and onward, hopefully. So yeah, if you're watching and you're in your 20s, I hope it's something that makes you feel excited to look forward to, because there's sure a lot of fears about aging. And if you are in your 30s, maybe some of it resonates with you. Thank you so much for being here, especially if you made it all the way to the end. Let me know. Leave a comment or something. And if you like what you saw today, feel free to stick around and subscribe. And you can also find me in various of other platforms that I sometimes attend to and sometimes do not. Just know that sometimes things don't make sense till much later. Anyways, that's it for me for today, and until next time.